As we look at the issue of globalization, we can see up close the effects of globalization between our countries of Mexico and United States here in Tijuana. A theological reflection or spiritual reflection on globalization is what brings us to the table today. Christ is our brother. We also believe as Christians, in the Catholic tradition, that Christ is present in our brothers and sisters. This belief that Christ is present in one another, especially in the poor, really is the underpinning principle for our support of immigrant workers in their organizing efforts to better their lives in working conditions, housing conditions, and the disgrace that is our migration policy, which is primarily a policy of deportation. What drives people north to put up with bad housing and the abuse of their civil liberties? We can begin to answer that question here at the border between the United States and Mexico. At the U.S.-Mexico Border Memorial in Tijuana, Mexico, we realize the stark difference between our two countries. The country that provides labor is Mexico. The country that provides the consumer power is the United States. Along the Mexican border, we have maquiladoras, or assembly line work, where people throughout Mexico, poorer regions, and even some parts of Central America come to work in the border area in these maquiladoras. Some of those who come north take their chances and try to go towards to work in the United States. Of course, this travel north bears many risks. Many people, upwards of 400 people each year, die in the desert trying to cross to provide a better home life, some economic security for their children and their families that they leave back home, or even for their parents. Why do people leave? What causes them to leave? And is the border wall a solution?
My experience with the wall is the German wall, the Berlin Wall, and around all Eastern Germany. The Berlin Wall was definitely higher, and to me it was intimidating because I was on the free side and now we're on this side here, and it was like the people, they were not afraid to shoot, and that was very scary. I'm really wondering what the U.S. border control would do if we would. I do not know what's happening when we try to jump and the Mexican gets over and tries to go to run for it.
The politics of the wall between the United States and Mexico is portrayed here from artist Artemio Rodriguez, a Los Angeles-based graphic artist, whose compositions are often themed on the exploitation of the Hispanic worker from Central America, Mexico, South America, working hard in the United States, benefiting the few while exploiting the many. All the politics about the wall and nationalism and keeping a strong defense of the wall do very little to actually address the root causes of migration.
Either most of the migrants, after they spend some time, they go where they came from, and I would say like 40% they start here in Tijuana.
40% stay here in Tijuana.
40% here in Tijuana.
Tijuana is growing at what rate each year?
Yeah, Tijuana is growing 100,000 people every year.
100,000?
100,000 people every year.
Looking deeper into the issue of globalization and migration, we look to the origin of where many of our migrants come from, Morelia, Mexico. Let's listen to some of the issues that are coming up for us. What are the issues that you guys see here in Michoacan?
Okay, well, number one, they want water and sewer for the Colonia Veronica Lopez. And then another one is there's some people, like sort of squatters that have been living there for a long time, and they want to get their property legalized. And they're asking for a lot of different things. They also want to get land for the poor people. They do not value the necessities of the people in Michoacan. They're neglecting the needs of the people in Michoacan. That's what it says.
The deep issues take us to speaking to some of the protesters. This man and this woman have been there for a number of months, taking turns with their fellow workers, looking at some of these issues of inequality and the lack of advancement opportunities for their children and for themselves. Economic hardships push these workers to basically occupy the village square, to air their grievances in public, to help advance themselves in some of the issues that are happening. Another difficulty of economic hardship is actually in the marketplace itself. As we look at NAFTA has provided food and vegetables for many of the men and women selling here in the market. So you see the wonderful quality of these vegetables is not because they're grown in great conditions in Mexico, but because they're exported from California. The food that is not exported is generally of an inferior quality and sometimes even more expensive. We have this woman here who's selling her peaches, pomegranates, and corn, some of the frijoles as well, on the side of the market. She obviously is not getting as much money from her subsistence farming as some of the wealthier farms that use genetically modified seeds. Here we're on the road to Teochitlan. Teochitlan is one of the outlying pueblos or villages outside of Guadalajara. And this is where many of our parishioners are from, this particular town. It's a modest town, fueled primarily by agriculture. Many of the wealthier farmers are able to use the genetically modified foods, many are not. Much of the support of the town actually comes from migrants living abroad in Canada, United States, sending money to support the town square, sending money to build the church. Here, Father Jorge, a village priest in Teochitlan, is speaking about many of the students get secondary education, but they don't go on to high school, and they work abroad in the United States. It's very difficult to maintain their values and their cultural ties to the community. Very difficult indeed. People leave this area because there are just no jobs. So there are no jobs for sustaining the family, for keeping the crops going. So people do have to leave. They're forced off, economically forced off of the land to support the life of people abroad. This is a typical reality in many of the small villages in Mexico. That also has a human impact to the story. These villages don't want to lose their best and their brightest workers. Oftentimes a father will leave his family behind, and sometimes he may even find a new family in the United States and abandon his support for his family and children in Mexico. Sometimes the children leave, leaving their parents behind, and oftentimes when caught in the United States, they are not able to maintain their spiritual, emotional, and moral values, and this creates also the further disintegration of the family. The reality is that very few people would, given the choice, would want to leave their family, their culture, their nation. They wouldn't want to leave their village where they were married, where they had their children baptized.
They can satisfy all their basic needs. I mean, have a decent life, they won't be migrating. That I can tell them. But the thing is, like, they don't have these opportunities in their own country. So our solution will be, I mean, the people, the countries that have the chance, trying to pass on these countries, and there will be less migration.
Great. After watching this, I'm hoping that you had and appreciate that the issue of migration is a much more complex issue than simply building a tighter border. It's about looking at investing, looking at trade, looking at family life, looking at the human angle of migration and economic opportunity. What's our spiritual call? What's our theological grounding? And what is our public policy? How do all those things come into play? That's my hope, that we can begin that conversation.